All right, let's talk about studying. Ever feel like you're just spinning your wheels, reading the same page over and over again? Well, if you've ever felt like studying is slow and frustrating, this one's for you. We're going to break down a surprisingly simple method that can seriously speed up how you learn.
Okay, let's start with a really powerful idea here. If you're staring at a textbook and feeling stressed out or just stuck, it's probably not you. You're not the problem. More often than not, it's the way you're studying that's broken.
So before we can get to the fix, we've got to understand the problem, right? And it all starts with why our brains sometimes just seem to check out.
You know that feeling? You sit down with a huge chapter and your brain just goes into defense mode. It's not trying to learn. It's trying to protect itself from being overwhelmed. It freezes up, it avoids the task, and it basically shuts the door to any new information. That's why you can stare at a page for an hour and not remember a single thing.
But what if there was a way to stop that shutdown before it even starts? Well, there is, and it's a simple little technique that works with your brain's natural learning style, instead of fighting against it.
Get this, the key isn't about blocking out huge 2-hour chunks of time. Nope, it's about starting with just 60 seconds. That's it, one single focused minute.
So this technique, it's called previewing, and the whole goal, the only goal in that first minute, is to give your brain a quick, high-level overview like a mental map of the information before you even try to learn any of the details.
So, what are you actually doing in these 60 seconds? Well, it's super simple. And the key thing to remember is you are not trying to learn anything. Not yet. You're just quickly scanning the main parts, the chapter headings, the subheadings, any words in bold, and just glancing at the pictures or diagrams.
And this is a huge mindset shift. Think of it like looking at a map before you start a road trip. You're not driving yet. You're just getting the lay of the land so your brain is ready for the journey ahead.
Okay, but why? Why is this one little minute so incredibly powerful? Let's get into the science of why this actually works so well.
It really boils down to 3 key things. First, this 60-second preview lowers your mental load. Second, it reduces the friction that stops you from starting. And third, it builds some serious learning momentum.
All right, first up, lowering the mental load. Think about it, a massive unknown chapter. That's intimidating. But once your brain sees the structure, the map, it doesn't feel like this giant, scary task anymore. It suddenly feels manageable, and that prevents that whole shutdown response we talked about earlier.
Second, it reduces friction. Instead of diving in and worrying, how am I going to remember all this stuff? That quick preview shifts your focus. You start thinking more like a detective, asking, what parts of this map look a little tricky? You spot the obstacles before you even hit them.
And third, and this one is an absolute game changer, it's all about the momentum rule. You know, getting started is always the hardest part. By making that first task ridiculously small, just 60 seconds, you make it easy to begin. And once your brain is in motion, it wants to stay in motion.
Okay, so this 60-second preview, it's not just some random hack. It's actually the critical first step in a really simple but super effective 3-step learning loop. Let's see how it all fits together.
Here's how the whole thing works. First, you do that 60-second preview. Then, and this is important, you close the book and try to explain the big idea out loud. It'll be messy, that's fine. Finally, you go back to the material and you only study the parts you couldn't explain. You're just filling in your own knowledge gaps.
And that's why this whole process feels so fast. You stop wasting time going over the 80% of the stuff you already kind of get. You're surgically targeting that 20% that actually needs your attention, which just slashes your study time.
All right, let's bring it all home. What's the one thing you absolutely need to remember from all this? If you take away just one idea, make it this one.
The big idea is this. Just forget about trying to find the motivation for some 2-hour study marathon. You don't need it. All you need is a 2-minute start. That tiny bit of motion is way more powerful than hours of just thinking about it, because it breaks through the biggest barrier to learning, which is just getting started.
See, when you get rid of that friction, that feeling of being totally overwhelmed, you just let your brain do what it's amazing at, learning and learning fast. So what journey are you going to map out in the next 60 seconds?